Good evening once again, and welcome to the Monday Review Show. We're live on Facebook, we're live on Twitter, we're live on YouTube, and I hope we're live wherever you're watching around the world. And we have people in Australia, Canada, USA, as well as the UK and South Africa, the continent of Africa, as well as South Africa. So you're all very welcome to the show tonight. We've got a couple of serious incidents and issues to discuss on the show tonight. But if you'd like to make any comments, please do so. At the bottom of your screen, there's a little swipe across, and you can leave a comment there. You can ask a question. But at all times, of course, please be respectful of the show and especially of my guest. Keith, great to have you on the show again.
Good evening.
Yeah. So I think, as you probably saw, and I certainly saw, and God knows how many other millions saw, this assault on a referee in Australia, absolutely appalling. I mean, the guy was, the assaulter was about 6'15" and was like a bloody sumo wrestler, and just laid into this referee and beat him and punched him and had to be dragged off him. And then there was another incident in South Africa, which is very dear to my heart, where the referee was chased off the field. He tried to take cover in the fourth official's little hut there. He was chased by this one particular team, and they proceeded to kick him, to beat him, to punch him. Heaven knows what. I couldn't watch anymore. I had to turn it off. I mean, and these were professional games, by the way. These are not your Sunday morning kickabout where guys are coming out with sore heads and big heads and hangovers, and they think they're George Best or whoever, and they don't agree with the referee. This was Premier League football. Now, heavens above.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing about the Australian courts, because I also read about the Australian incident, which was brutal.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was absolutely brutal.
Yeah.
And the judge, having seen the film, decided you're not getting bail. So I think that we need to send a message out to players. We know it's a passionate game, but players and managers and fans have got to restrain and show respect.
The old internet plays funny games with us. Anyway, got you back now. Yeah, good.
Yeah, and these real assaults that are taking place, when they do take place, gives everybody a bit of a wake-up call. And I think that I've no doubt the Australian Federation will be taking a very glim view about this particular subject.
It's appalling, though. I mean, and how many referees that you are aware of actually take these guys to court? Very few that I know of who've been assaulted. So it's almost as if the pitch, the normal laws of the land don't apply to a soccer pitch.
Well, I think that the FA here in England encourage referees, when they are physically assaulted, to involve the police. And then what happens is the FA note what has taken place. They allow the judicial process to take place and the courts to come to a decision. And we have seen players who have assaulted match officials getting jailed and spending time in jail.
Oh, excellent.
So we have seen that in England. And then, of course, what happens then is the FA deal with the matter once the courts have dealt with the matter. My view, simple. If a player can't control himself and assaults the referee, then that player should never be allowed to play football or soccer again. And I think if the authorities are not going to take action, then referees have got to take action. Now, I'm not a militant, but I am saying or suggesting that referees must support their colleagues. And if this is happening on a regular basis, or referees are being abused by a particular team on a regular basis, then you referees refuse to referee and officiate that team. Don't go there.
All referees, absolutely ostracize
go
them
there.
completely. Yeah,
Because I think that self-preservation has to kick in here. I don't think any referee should go to. We do refereeing at whatever level we're at as a form of enjoyment. And, I've got lots of colleagues like you, Errol, around the world who, of all ages, who thoroughly enjoy the game. We've got referees here in England that are 70, 80 plus years old. And they really do enjoy the game. It's their life. And therefore, I think that when players and teams and managers, whoever they are, want to spoil that enjoyment, then toughen up referees. And I think if they are at a game and they feel a degree of fear and that they feel that they are at risk, blow the whistle, walk off, leave it to themselves. Because I think that, I think it's a difficult one. I think that what referees have got to do clearly is report these matters to the police, be very specific with the information, the players and everything that goes and gets involved. And I think that will help the process.
Have you ever been assaulted, Keith?
No. I can remember I did a game and it was two teams. One of the teams was actually made up of deaf players. They were all deaf, and I carried a whistle and a flag.
I did one of those. I had a handkerchief.
So it was an interesting game, but there was a guy who was not happy with a spectator, and it all blew up a little bit, and I got involved, and then reported the matter, and then some weeks later. I was out shopping, I think, and this guy came up to me and was a bit in my face. So I reported the matter again, and said, after the event, here's the report, here's the dates, this is what happened. And it was finished. But I also had a game, a semi-final in Sheffield, where, when I think back, I should have dealt with a spectator. There was a spectator who was pretty abusive, not to me, but to a player. And at the end of the game, the goalkeeper who had been abused verbally, before I could even intercept him, ran towards the spectator and just absolutely blitzed him and knocked him to the floor. And I reported it.
Red card, of course, isn't it? It's a red card.
Yes. Yeah. So well, interestingly, we didn't have red cards then. Really, so I'm pre-1970. Anyhow, the outcome was that I went to a hearing. I gave my view of the matter, and then a few weeks later, the same player came up to me, apologised, and said, "Look, as a matter of interest, I've been banned sine die. I'm not allowed to play football at all." So the county FA at that time, we had a guy called Ernest Kangley, who was then later followed by Jeff Thompson, who became the chairman of the FA. And both of them, in fairness, were pretty strict and very supportive about referees. Jeff Thompson in particular was extremely supportive. And in fact, you've heard me talk about the UEFA Referee Convention. He was a member of the UEFA Referees Committee that put that convention to the committee and got the funding.
There was an issue you raised, Keith, about players. What was that committee being made up of? Players and referees, administrators, writing assessment reports on a referee. Come on.
Well,
how can a player? You see, I'm going back, by the way, to the just so people know about you not being assaulted. Well, you're probably what, about 6'4"?
Yes, 6'2".
Well, no one's going to probe you. But imagine a little guy who's 5 foot nothing,
Yeah.
And of course that's where the bullying part comes in. They take advantage. They wouldn't take advantage in big man. Yeah, but
the learning point. Yeah, the learning point here is that if you go approach a player, put your hands face down, right, as you move towards the player, that gives a signal that you're not in conflict, calm down, and then you remain 2 arms length away from that player. Don't move in to 2 feet. It's got to be more like a meter plus,
Yeah.
a yard, so that if a punch is swung, it's going to miss you. And that's the sort of, if you like, a basic training in terms of conflict management. Yeah. On the other subject,
would you agree with players being involved or being?
Yes.
I would just Irish player on Jonathan Walters. I think I saw his name being made, an ex-Irish player.
Yes.
I'm not sure that's a good idea, and I know people will argue and say, no, referees can't assess referees. It's like the cops investigating, but there are good guys. What would players do?
Well, let me tell you, because I'm the guy that actually introduced the system for assessing referees at the PGMOL. We had a really good group of ex-referees, ex-linesmen, assistants assessing referees. But the general view in the media and with managers and with the League Managers Association was that it was all one-sided. It was all referees protecting referees.
Yeah.
And the Premier League wanted to move to a greater level of openness. So with Mike Foster, who was the General Secretary and a former player, a really nice guy, and now he's chairman of the PGMOL. But Mike and I sat and we agreed that we would have a list of assessors, former referees, and we would create a panel of ex-managers, ex-players in the role of match delegate. They were employed and paid for on a match fee basis by the Premier League. The idea then was to do away with the manager's report that we would have, because it was always biased. So the thing was that here's the next manager ex-player who would go to the game, pretty independent, listen into the pre-match instructions, and therefore gain a flavour of the referee and the game, watch the game, go in with the referee post-match and happy to ask a question and get an answer, maybe suggest, in many instances, the surprise was they thought that our referees weren't tough enough at the time, and we toughened up through them. And as a result, we had 2 panels. We had a matrix that from 1 to 20 marked by the assessors of the 20 referees, and a 1 to 20 by the match delegates. And we put those into quartiles. So you might have a referee who was A1 application of law and B1 or B2 in relation to match assessment. So what it gave us was an opportunity to look at a game and a performance. Now, that's worked extremely well. And in fact, this is where I disagree with Mike Riley, the former boss. He has done away with the match assessors and gone to invigilators and a tick box system and a review of DVDs or videos or whatever. The thing that really worried me was that the PGMOL since have now created a panel that looks at the key match incidents. And that's where I really get concerned, because in the role of match delegate, they might have said, the red card was harsh. In many instances, it was the opposite, that they thought the referee had been too lenient, and they saying, look, he's injured the player. You can't be allowed to get away with that. So it actually gave us quite a rounded report. But I'm uneasy about the panel that looks at the key major incidents, because those need to be looked at with a thorough knowledge of law. Now, let's take the 2 incidents this weekend. In the West Ham Manchester United game, there was a clear handball. there's no question that this was a handball, and much to the surprise of former players, former referees, and even Dermot Gallagher on his review program today said very clearly that was a penalty kick. Now, I have to say, why does a referee miss it? Well, okay, fine, he's missed it. He may not have the view, but we've got VAR. So it's an error. And whilst it didn't impact on the game, people say, from it, a penalty kick would have been awarded, right? And that might have impacted on the score at the end of the season, which is 2 weeks away. So on that situation, a penalty kick was not given. Now we go to Newcastle, Arsenal, where Newcastle, a shot on goal with the referee very well positioned, points immediately to the penalty mark. And the VAR comes in and rightly asks the referee to look at his decision of the penalty kick award. And when you looked at it, the ball actually hit the thigh of the player. It was a very close call. You have to say, why didn't the referee see that? But he didn't. And so on that one, VAR operated very well, and the game was the penalty kick was turned over. But you know, the VAR on that Manchester United West Ham game was Stuart Atwell, and he's a serial offender at the moment. Yeah. So I think
he's getting a lot of games.
He's getting too many games because he's making too many mistakes. It's as simple as that. You know, if you're at the elite level, and some people think I'm harsh, I just look at it as though, look, there's £26 million spent by the PGMOL. That's their turnover in 2022. £26 million. You have to deliver near perfect performances. Now, the number of big decisions are impacting on the position of clubs in the league and the outcome of the games. And that's where I think Howard Webber's got some work to do. Look, I think it's a fairly easy answer for him. He's got to appoint a VAR manager because he can't do everything. And the sooner he does that, the better. Yeah. And Howard, if you're listening to this show, there's a guy called Greg Barkey in America. He's your man. Now, the interesting thing in the Daily Mail today, Errol, is that Howard has said to them that he intends next season launching a 30-minute program on Sky where he will discuss VAR incidents, and we will be able to listen in to the conversation between the referee and the VAR. Now, that is a fairly bold step, but it's one that they've been doing in America pretty successfully.
There's a comment here from Desmond Edwards. I'll put it up there. He said, "Hi, folks. I remember asking if the Premier refs were assessed." Right. Well, I would think they are, Desmond. I mean, you know, at that level.
Let me. The process is they use a system called 360, and what happens is there is a small panel who review each game in detail. So they review the referee's performance. There isn't an assessor at the game. And I think that's where it's wrong, because a referee, if we look at proper assessors, the real good assessors, the move I had was I said to them one day in a room, all you assessors are referee coaches. I expect you to look at the game in detail, examine the performance, but you must do it that this is an education process where you're trying to improve performances. You know, I don't want you to dwell on a minute thing about a signal from a referee. I want the umbrella of how can I, when I'm sat in that stand, how can I improve this referee's performances, and how could I help him in this particular game? And the approach often was to go into a referee's dressing room and say, hey, talk me through talk me through this decision that you've made. And therefore, it's a working relationship.
Just on that now, Keith, and we had it here for years, and I'm not sure it's still going on, but we always had, to me, the assessor, match inspector, call him what you like, is the referee coach.
Yes.
And the team has their coach with them. Why don't the referees have their coach with them? And I believe that coach should be in there before the game, halftime, and at the end of the game. Not to lambast them, not to criticize or shout or scream and so on, like we used to get. We got shouted at.
Absolutely.
And it made us better referees, I think, today. But today the guys are so sensitive and so soft.
Yeah.
But why can't that still happen? Or does it happen?
Well, I mean, that's exactly how I run it. But Mike Riley, who took over, didn't operate that system. And he's changed it. Now, I'm hearing noise.
Why do you think that is? Why would he change it?
Control. I think, I could get into the detail of that, but I think it's less transparent. I think if I've got, as I had, maybe 30, 40 assessors, we could get those assessors into the training and education, train them, educate them, get them really fine. And if we look at the standard of officiating, and I created a cadre of world-class referees, a lot of that work was done by the assessors, by the referee coaches, working closely together to say, look, going into referees and saying, look, he could do, he needs to touch up this, he needs to sharpen up in this area, and sometimes I'm in agreement with you. I mean, I used to go in and UEFA at half time, and sometimes overseas referees would look at me, but I said to them, look, if I feel it appropriate, I'll come in at half time. And it'll not be for any reason other than I've seen something, or there might be something I want to say. And I can remember
it could be complimentary as well as critical.
I mean, I can remember going in and praising a referee, saying, look, that's a wonderful 45 minutes. But as I was leaving, I turned and I said, now we've got a second game. I expect that consistency to run in the second game, and it's so important. One of the things that's leveled at referees is inconsistency. We see in England, don't we? We see games being allowed to flow in the first half, and then in the second, yellows suddenly appear for challenges in the first half that were let go by the referee. No action. So I think it's about consistency. But sometimes, I've been in that room and I've said, look, okay, a referee said to me, I think I've made an error with a penalty kick decision. I've gone, park it. Forget it.
Yeah.
Clear your mind. The second half now is another game. And just be aware that you'll have lost a little bit of respect. So you've now got to win it back. And that the only way you win that back is to work harder.
Keith, does that filter down to the so-called lesser leagues? I'm not talking about the Championship, League One, League Two. I mean, right down to Sunday morning games. Are there assessors there? And having said that, surely there has to be, because how will guys get promoted if there isn't an assessor or referee inspector, call it what you like, there to assess them and mark them down and say, well, this guy should move up one or should be promoted? It surely filters down.
Well, not every game is assessed. And what you have
there aren't probably enough assessors to go around.
Yeah.
I know, yeah.
I do know that at, if you like, from what we term level 4 to 5, 5 to 4, that you will get, you have to have a specific number of assessments. And sometimes you'll get the referee ringing the league saying, look, is it possible? I've had X number of games in a time slot. I need to be assessed. And one of the referees that I'm assisting, I wouldn't suggest coaching, but assisting, and we exchange regularly. In the last few weeks, he was doing 2 and 3 games a week, in order to get his required number of matches in order for promotion. So yes, but it's not 100%. And I'll tell you what I used to do. I used to have a guy called Brian Baker, the late Brian Baker, who was a Football League assistant referee, much older than I at the time. And I one day said to him, Brian, what are you doing? You've retired from football. I'm not. He said, well, I'm not assessing. Right. You can come with me to every game. I'll pick you up from your home and we'll go to a game. And I would get in the car, and there's sometimes when the game hadn't gone well and I'm a little bit dejected, and he would sit there and go, what's wrong? And I go, think the game could have gone better. Don't be silly. Look at that number 7 and how he missed that open goal. What's your problem? Well, I could have done this better and I could have done that better. Well, okay, learn from it. So I had a consistent assessor, but I mean, look, the wife's put him away somewhere, but I've got all the assessments of the games that I officiated at.
Yeah, I have to.
And
yes.
I often go back, and I think sometimes there is a brutality in it. I can remember getting promoted to the Football League, and I was on the Northern Premier League, the leagues below the Football League, as a referee. Promoted as in the middle. I'd refereed about 3 Football League games, and I got a letter from the Northern Premier League saying, we expect your performances to improve. And it was a real kick up the backside, because sometimes I rang the secretary and said, look, I'm obviously disappointed I've got this letter. I'm not going into these games in any different way to what I do at a Football League game and a Premier League game. And he goes, I think you might be trying too hard, Keith. You don't have to prove to our league that you're a Football League referee. You are. Enjoy your time there, but this is your last season on this league. Just enjoy it. And that was from Ken Dagnall, who was a former top FIFA international referee, who was secretary of the referees. So it was good advice.
Just another comment from, that's an opinion from Desmond. Desmond, I'd love to know where you're from. Maybe you can just tell me the country you're from. That's all I need to know. There's no way the Stuart Atwill is or has been accessed. I'm sure he means assessed.
Yeah.
Some of these games. As I said, I'd love to know where you're from, Desmond. If you just let us know.
Well, he's. I mean, the referee's having a poor time. And that happens. And what Howard Webb should do, not for me to tell him to do his job, take him out the firing line. But the referee, when you look at West Ham, Manchester United, it's always a big game, and I felt he let the referee down. Now just send the referee to the screen. That's what he should have done. I think this is a penalty kick. Go and have a look. Don't. He's made the decision. He's making the decision by saying no. It's not.
And my very good friend here, Declan King, who lives down in a place called Kinsale, which is down in County Cork. He's a huge Manchester City fan, but he says, ask Keith what he thought of the penalty that City did not get.
I thought it was a penalty kick, and I mean, we can go on forever about decisions. I mean, the one that really impacted for me this week was, I'm a Sheffield Wednesday fan, and they were playing Derby County, who needed the points to be in the playoff. And the referee, on a very slight contact, the Sheffield Wednesday player went down, and he awarded a penalty kick. Now, that's an opinion, fine. I don't think it was a sufficient contact for a penalty kick to be awarded. However, he then, amazingly, produced a red card when there was a covering defender. And I sort of posted that. I sort of said on social media, I'm a Wednesday fan. I don't think this Derby County player should have been dismissed. I think it's had close to 500,000 views. Because they're obviously, what I can't understand why this young referee jumped for a red card. It's almost like it's a foul. He hasn't look. The Sheffield Wednesday player did not make an attempt to play the ball. There was a holding, but it wasn't. It was minimal. Fine. I'm not unhappy with the penalty kick award. If that's what he wants to give, fine. But he cannot justify a red card when there is a covering defender.
Keith, we were to talk about a few other things. One particular issue was, of course, Mike Riley as head of the PGMOL, which seems like his tenure is coming to an end, or maybe already has, but we'll discuss that next week. Incidentally, Desmond, who very kindly made comments tonight, he's from Barbados, but he's now living in Canada. At present, he said, I've done my courses and he said, I watched lots of Premier football, and kudos must be given to Rob Jones. He has been fantastic this season.
Yeah.
We'll do it all again next week, Keith. Thank you very much again for joining us. And to you watching out there, thank you for watching. Keep your comments coming in. Until next Monday, 8 p.m. as usual. Good night and God bless.
Good night.